What's up, everybody? It's Ade, and listen, Living Corporate is partnering with the Coalition of Black Excellence, like some of you may know. Coalition of Black Excellence is a nonprofit organization based in California, and we're bringing a special speaker series to promote CBE Week, which is an annual week-long event designed to highlight excellence in the Black community, connect Black professionals across sectors, and provide opportunities for professional development and community engagement that will positively transform the Black community. This special series is one wherein we will spotlight movers and shakers who will be speakers during CBE Week. Today we have with us Dr. Rosche Brown. Dr. Rosche Brown is a side B. I don't I don't know too many of those. Congratulations on your awesomeness. A licensed clinical psychologist based out in California. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Most certainly. So, like I mentioned before, we're just gonna have a conversation. We're great fans of mental health, mental wellness on this show, and it's so great to meet and speak to other proponents who are not just talking to the talk, but walking the walk in a lot of ways. What brought you to becoming a mental health professional? Yeah.
So I became a mental health professional mainly because of my background in my childhood. There was a lot of dysfunction within like my family and also my community with violence and substance abuse. And lack of communication, as is always in most families. And so actually at a very young age, when I was about 14 years old, I actually decided that I wanted to be called a doctor and I wanted to be able to help people. People were already telling me about their lives, and I was like, I can do this. And so at a very young age, I had already placed in my mind that I was going to become a doctor of some sort, either a pediatrician, psychologist. And so I began to figure out, what the steps were to become a mental health professional, or either one of those professions, actually. So I ended up going to Xavier University, which is a HBCU, so it's Historical Black College in New Orleans. And by going to that university, it was all about placing African Americans into medical school. And so there was that's when I really understood Black excellence to a whole nother level. Just being around so many people who were the top of their classes that were actually there. And so I went through that process, and with my major being psychology pre-med initially, I enjoyed psychology, and actually from there continued to go into grad school instead of going the medical school route.
That's amazing. For one, your tenacity. You were in school from 2001 to how long?
I graduated actually in 2009.
Holy God.
Yeah, well, it was a long time. I understand that's a long time in school, but in the grand scheme of things, from the way that my life was, I actually was done with my degree at 25 years old, which is very young. And I had my doctorate, had my master, my bachelor's, and my doctorate by that point. My 26th birthday was happy 26th birthday, Dr. Rosche Brown.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so it was awesome. I mean, so even though it took some time, I was so used to school that it was a lot easier compared to people who would take a break.
Right.
And then.
Yeah, you just went straight through. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest, what were some of the biggest issues that you dealt with kind of pushing your way through school? I know that you said from a young age you kind of made a decision about the path that you wanted, but did you ever come across any obstacles in your education? Or how'd that go for you?
Yes, I did. So, I went to school, out of, in a whole other world, right? Going to New Orleans, coming from California. So, I did get a good group of people who were around me. And so that part was great. However, like I said, that I was pre-med initially. And one big challenge, which is kind of an interesting challenge that most people wouldn't think of, but one big challenge was mostly the Mcat, which Mcat is the test that you take to get into medical school.
Yeah.
And the part that was hard for me was actually kind of growing up in, in the hood, in the community. I was so used to, more than anything, not having to, I didn't have to read that much in life. Like, my mom didn't make me read. I wasn't a person who liked reading. Like, it was very, very difficult for me. And most people wouldn't think so, because I did well in school. It wasn't like it was so difficult where I couldn't excel, but it was difficult when it came down to the Mcat, because it was all of those like reading comprehension tasks you ever have, like on SATs or anything like that. And they wanted me to comprehend, and I was like, oh Lord, I got ADD. I know I do. Like this, I cannot focus for this long. It was like 8-hour test. And I just could, even when they were asking me certain questions that I could know the answer to, because the way in which they were asking it, it was very difficult for me. I took a lot of prep courses, and in the process of taking those prep courses, when they translated it for me, I was good to go. Like when they translated, I was like, oh, I know the answer to that. But I had difficulty with translating it on my own, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, so it was really hard for me to, so that even when they were asking me about biology, any chemistry questions, physics questions, all of those things had reading passages. And that's where I really struggled. And so I ended up going through school doing pretty well. Like my GPA was fine. I had like a 3.5 or more. So I was doing well, but I got to that place where it was time to like apply to medical school, and my MCAT scores were just not like really making the cut. And a lot of it had to do with just poor reading comprehension, and the fact that I wasn't like in a school, or I wasn't in kind of like a family environment, in a household that really encouraged reading.
Right. Yeah. That makes a ton of sense, and I could absolutely see the repercussions. You mentioned that you struggle with a learning disorder. How does that affect? Well, how did that affect your education journey, and how does it affect you now?
Well, and I don't know specifically if it's a learning disorder. It's never been diagnosed as a learning disorder at all. But it's more about me attending to things. Like I just don't stay long enough to pay attention to the words and everything for reading comprehension. And so it's always it probably was always a struggle throughout school, but I never noticed it until that point. And then currently, with me being an entrepreneur, and the aspect of being an entrepreneur, you really want to read as much as you can. You want to read Think and Grow Rich and How to Win Friends and Influence People, all these like great books that are going to just motivate you and inspire you to be better and push yourself. It's always a struggle for me to sit down and focus in order to even read those types of books, because my mind goes all kind of different places. So I want the information in the book, but sitting down and having to read it can be very difficult. But even to this day, like I still would say I just like reading. Even though I don't want to say that, but I'm gonna make my book reports and everything. I'm just gonna make them love it.
I totally get that. I get that. So what impact, just kind of to pivot a bit and talk a little bit more about your career as a mental health care professional. Mm-hmm. What impact has, I guess, your background coming from Oakland, going to this illustrious HBCU in Louisiana, how has that added to your practice?
It's added a lot. When I first started in school, considering that I was so young, right? I was 21, 22. Most people in my class were like in their 30s. And so I felt like I was like an imposter. Like, how did I get into grad school? Right. How did they accept me? And feeling like I just didn't have enough life experience initially in order to do the work that I was doing. So initially it was like a struggle to try to do therapy. But after some time, I would say like after I graduated, maybe around 26, 27, coming into my own as just a woman in general, and having had a lot more experience in it, I started realizing like my background of life experience is actually what's really helping me, because the places that I was working in urban communities. I was working in Richmond, I was working in Oakland, I was working in communities that were very ultimately the same community that I grew up in. And so I realized that the way to build rapport and the way to build connection was really by utilizing what I already knew, the stuff that was even outside of grad school. It was just knowing even just practical skills that I had learned on my own. I learned how to navigate certain worlds. I learned how to even just, well, I guess we would say code switch, but I learned how to navigate in the community, but I also learned how to navigate when I was in professional settings. Mm-hmm. And because I was able to do that, it really worked very well for me to build the best relationships with my clients. And then also I served as a role model, even unintentionally, that you can be something better. So like even the idea of just striving for excellence, the way that I saw my clients was like, you can have a doctorate degree, no matter what. Like I see your skill where you are right now and what family circumstances you come from. I have expectations of you to get a doctorate if that's what you desire. Mm-hmm. I don't have lower expectations like some of my, I would say my white counterparts would often sometimes feel. It's like, oh, at least they're coming. I'm like, no, your expectation needs to be a lot higher for them.
Right. I'm so glad you said that, because I think I've heard a lot the conversation around the danger of lowered expectations and how important it is to kind of expect better of yourself.
Yes.
And I imagine that it is much easier to do so when you are surrounded by people who are doing the same.
Yes. Definitely.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, just definitely. I agree.
Yeah. So tell us about, speak a little bit more about kind of your practice and how you, any suggestions that you might have for young professionals who are navigating their way and kind of noticing a decline in their mental wellness.
So I think you mentioned something really good on the last point of like just like the level of surrounding yourself by good people. I think that's always the biggest thing, right? So I would say number one, surround yourself by the right people. I have an acronym that I often talk to people about, and it's called Check Your Pace. And what it means is like, have you ever noticed like when you've been physically walking with someone and that person maybe start walking slower, or they're just, maybe they're unhealthy, out of shape, and you find yourself kind of like slowing down your pace in order to stay connection with them. And then vice versa, like versus you end up going with somebody who's walking fast, they super healthy, and you're like, oh my God, I'm trying to keep up with you. And if we can physically do that, like unconsciously take on the pace of the person that we're walking with in a physical way, we ultimately do that mentally and spiritually and socially and financially, right? That, we'll take on just kind of the energy of the people that are around us without even paying attention that we're doing so.
Right.
So I just believe that it's so important when we're in this like just levels of being professionals or wanting to strive for excellence, that we first, like the first part of PACE is P, is check the people that you're around, right? Because you are the average of the 5 people that you're around the most, right? So you want to check, where is their money like? You know what I mean? Where is their career like? What kind of degrees do they have? What's happening around them is going to be a reflection on what's going to ultimately happen with you. And then also, I think when it comes down to people, you also want to check what's I call the A part of PACE is alignment. Like, who are you aligning yourself with? And alignment to me is more vertical, like, who's doing better than you in your world, significantly better than you. You want to make sure you're aligning with that person who's making good money. If you're like making $50,000 and you want to make 6 figures, you need to be around a 6-figure earner, right? you six-figure earner and you want to make $250,000, you need to be around somebody who's making $250,000, because there's no way for me to get there if I'm not around somebody who's actually showing me the habits that's necessary, the skills that are necessary to get there, right? So I have to be like in alignment with somebody that's even doing better than me in certain areas. So I believe that that's another area. The C part of PACE is choices. And so you want to check every single choice that you make, right? And I was just actually at specifically this lady named Renee Blewett. She's just did a documentary called She Did That. And it was talking about Black women entrepreneurs. And what came out in that a lot was the level of of self-care and not practicing self-care, having that like superwoman type of complex. Like I can do it all. I can do all everything, like I can do family life. I can do everything in my career and not even outsource it. And I'm taking on too much. Right. And I know I've been there. I live in that space a little bit now still, right, where I haven't really figured out a way to release all control over what's necessary in my business. But it's also, it's creating a level of stress. And I think that we're just so used, specifically within our community, I would say, we're always so used to juggling so much. Right. So mental health thing, we need to learn how to take breaks. We need to learn how to do even just mindfulness breathing. I'm all about mindfulness. And I often tell people, even if you think it's weird, start with just 5 deep breaths. We should have 5 deep breaths, like into our nose, holding it and breathing out. In our community, we know how to, breathe in, and well, not just in Black communities, but all communities, clearly, because now it's legal. People know how to breathe in and hold, right? Like that's part of something that they do. But there's a way to do that without needing a product or an assistance. You can actually just learn the power of just breathing in, life force, and then being able to hold it and then breathe out just kind of the waste and toxins that are in our body, and even just negativity, and be able to learn how to to think more clearly, what's my next move versus us just kind of going. And so that's a level of just the C. So kind of checking your choices. Sorry, I'm all over the place, but that's a part of my checking your pace. The C part is just check your choices. What choices are you making? And are they making you get towards your goal or away from your goal? And are you taking care of yourself in that process? And the E part of pace is expectations. Like what are you expecting from your life? Because whatever we expect in our lives, we will manifest in our lives. Things that we expecting unconsciously or even consciously, we need to really pay attention. What is happening? What am I bringing into my life? People call law of attraction or whatever it may be, but what's always coming into my life that I dislike, and how am I on accident and unintentionally bringing it into my life? So kind of check your expectations.
Yeah, that is, I'd really love to follow up with that so that we can have a quick write-up for our listeners, but that was a great framework for kind of understanding your mental health and taking charge of that. Thank you for sharing it. Is there anywhere or do you have any material that we can follow up with our followers? Or anything that you would like to share or plug?
Yeah, I guess people definitely can go to my website. My business name is Doctor of Rethinking, and so my website is drofrethinking.com, and that's DoctorOfrethinking. So drofrethinking.com, and on there you can get information about how to end up doing coaching with me, or doing it can be therapy as well. I'm in a more state of more solution focused levels where we kind of visit the past, but we don't stick in the past as much as what therapy does anymore. And then also I do financial coaching, because I've come to realize that there's definitely a psychology to the way that people spend and save their money. And so you can also go on there and be able to get information around the financial area, and even setting up an appointment with me for us to, maybe meet and check and get educated on finances. What should you do next with your finances? And see what kind of solutions that are out there that might be helpful.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I know that for quite a few, my circle of the people in my circle, a lot of our stress is financial. Being, kind of the first person in your family to be a professional, or the first person in your family to make it, as it were, is a burden. Like, it's a blessing, but it's also a burden in a lot of ways. And so just finding out ways to develop healthy relationships with your finances cuts out quite a bit of the stress that you might experience. Yeah.
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, when you're the first person in your family to even be making money, and everybody around you, right, never knew how to manage theirs, then now you have a lot of it and you're mismanaging yours because you don't understand how to manage your money, right? And you may even have a lot of emotions tied to your money. And then you also have family expectations that are tied to your money, right? And how do you set boundaries that are correct? I give you just kind of it's a simple example, but when I was, I used to work with foster youth, and I used to work with them in the community. And my client, her mom was a substance abuser, and I had substance abusers within my family as well. And she just got her first job, right? And she was like, my mom always asks me for my money. What do I do? And for me, I know, coming from the community, I couldn't just tell her, don't give her nothing. It doesn't really work like that. It doesn't work in families to just say, I'm giving you zero. Right. But I do believe that you should have a budget in mind of what you're planning on or are willing to give to your family. If that's, because that's kind of how it works. I mean, I know that I'm going to have to give them something. But if I don't pay attention to what I'm giving them, I'll give them too much. Right. And so what I told her, and I think it's the same even as we get older, is I told her, put your real money, if you have $100, you might want to put 90 of it in one pocket and then the 10 in the other pocket. And then when your mom says, oh, I need something, you pull out the 10 and say, this is all I have. So hopefully she'll only want to take 5. Compare you pulling out the 90. She'll need all 90, because she'll think that you're in overflow. And I feel like that's the same type of concept, that even as we get older and we start to have more money, that you have an idea what I'm willing to pull out for my family. So they don't end up taking my all. And I'm finding myself in debt and, poor credit and all this kind of stuff because I'm always bailing them out. Right. And I'm ultimately bailing out irresponsibility. I'm never really teaching them the skills to be better. They're irresponsible, and I'm just going to keep on helping their irresponsibility, and they're going to always need me. Right. And so I need to figure out what's the best way that I could, bless them and, all of that, but also make sure that I'm still doing what's right for me and my future.
Right. That was perfect. Thank you so much for sharing that. We've kind of reached the end of our planned conversation for today. But if there's anything else, any other wisdom that you'd like to share for young Black professionals, we're just kind of figuring it out on our own.
Yeah, I mean, it's a process. Is all I would say. And I feel like every single step of the way, you just got to get help. You got to get support when you need to. I recently, this is just my own personal journey, is I've been saying that you need to break up with your old self, and you have to break up with your old self daily, and so I would say so for me, I feel like there's always there's a part of you that's kind of holding you back at times, and it could be based on whatever your personal experiences, child experience, backgrounds, and everything like that. But some things are always holding you back, and so you have to kind of get to a place where how do I break up with that part of myself that's not really serving me anymore? Maybe it served me when I was younger, but it's not serving me now, and I need to really think about that a little bit. How do I go through the process of breaking up with myself? and moving into my new, better, excellent self, like a upgrade to myself on a regular basis. And it could be simple things. It could be breaking up with like self-doubt, right? It can be breaking up with like your fears, breaking up with insecurities, breaking up with poor habits, a lack of discipline, all of those things, because those things are really holding you back from your greatness. And like I say, I notice it in myself, right? And though other people outside of me can be like, oh, you're awesome, you're doing this, you're killing the game, but you know what you're capable of, right? And so sometimes that there's more that you can pull forth, and you're not pulling it forth. And so you kind of have to find times to just like, I got to break up with this part. Like when I lack discipline, when I don't want to wake up, when I want to be a little lazy, like, no, get up. You have to do this because like there's a better you that's out there, and the world is going to miss out on that person if you don't get out of your own way, basically.
Right. Yeah, no, that was amazing to hear. And I'm probably going to write down break up with yourself. Some basic notes and put them in my workspace. That for one, it's important to know that you're not the only one having certain experiences, right? So when you said that there were things that have served you in the past that no longer apply or no longer fit into this new world you're in, I can't tell you how hard I relate to that. And even further, that there are people overcoming those circumstances. That path has been walked before.
Yes.
It's good to know, good to hear, and very, very useful. Well, I want to thank you so much, Dr. Brown, for joining us, for spending time with us today, and for sharing your wisdom. It's been helpful in a ton of ways, and I just want to know if you have any favorite things or any shout outs, anything that you'd like to share with our listeners before we
go. I don't know, just continue. I often say, like, don't be ordinary when you can throw some extra on it, and be
extra. I love that.
So so I'm all about throw some extra on it. So what is that little extra that you need to do? I have no idea what I'm going to be talking about specifically during the CBE week. So maybe some of these same concepts might come up again. Don't be mad at me. You might need it again though at that point. But I'm all like, we always have to do a little extra. So go ahead and put some extra out there and be like the best you that you were designed and destined to be.
That's awesome. Thank you. All right. That does it for us. Thank you for joining us on the Living Corporate Podcast, everybody. Do make sure to follow us on Instagram at Living Corporate, on Twitter at livingcorporate_pod, and subscribe to our newsletter through www.living-corporate.com. If you have a question you'd like us to answer and read on the show, please make sure you email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. This has been our day. Thank you for listening to Dr. Brown. Peace.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.